Together we create possible.
Welcome to this Young Epilepsy's podcast, where we discuss hot topics, things that are really important to our young people, children living with epilepsy and their families. We're here to help provide information and tools to families, carers and healthcare professionals. Today, the podcast is about diagnosis, and we will be talking to a parent, Sarah Barnes. She is the mother of Lexi. This is a parent story, so this is quite emotional. Now, I will be transparent. I was Lexi's epilepsy nurse specialist when she was first diagnosed with epilepsy, so I know this family very well, and I know the journey that they have been on and that they are still on, but I hope you find the content useful. If you do find our content useful, please do like, subscribe, and follow us on socials. Before we begin our next podcast, I'd like to take a minute to thank our supporter for this episode of our podcast, Eisai. Eisai is a global pharmaceutical company. Eisai is committed to enhancing the lives of patients and their families. This podcast episode is made possible by an educational grant from Eisai to support us. Our supporters do not influence the Young Epilepsy podcasts, the creation, the topics and the guests. Questions are led by Young Epilepsy and our community. I am really pleased today that our fantastic guest that's joining us is a parent of a young person who was diagnosed with epilepsy. We are going to talk a little bit around that in a minute, but before we get into that, we are going to have just a quick overview. So our overview, what is epilepsy? So epilepsy is a tendency to have recurrent seizures, which means they can happen at any time to anyone and from any walk of life, but it is the most serious neurological condition in childhood. So epilepsy, if you remember, is a tendency to have recurrent seizures. So there are lots of different seizure types. There's over 40 different seizure types, and seizures are broken down into focal, which means they come from one part of your brain only, or generalized, which means they affect the whole of your brain. Why do some people get epilepsy? That's a question that we aren't always going to be able to answer. The highest percentage of people that have epilepsy, around 60%, is unknown. We don't know. Why is it me and not you? Sometimes we just don't know. We know genetics can play a small part in it. Around 7 to 10% of people have a genetic link, a link in their family, for example. But the majority of people who have an epilepsy, the cause is unknown. So what we're going to get into today, I'm going to introduce you to Sarah. Now, Sarah, I'm probably a little bit biased here because I know Sarah Barnes and her family very well, and she'll explain to you why during this podcast. But we're going to talk through Sarah's journey, Lexi's journey, and their family's journey. So Sarah, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Tell me about Lexi.
Lexi. Lexi is now 14. She is she still has her seizures. She's a bright girl. She's a bright young lady. She does have a learning disability. We do still struggle with her epilepsy, mainly at night. Night times are quite fun. But other than that, she doesn't let it stop her. She's into all sorts of things. She's a typical teenager and has a lot to say.
She does. Talk to me about the beginning of this story, Sarah. Talk to me about what you first noticed back all those years ago.
So our journey started when Lexi was around 4, I would say. I kept seeing her zone out. And my whole life I've worked with children with disabilities, and I have been around epilepsy, and I thought I was seeing absent seizures, and she would just stop, completely freeze, her colour would drain from her face, and then she'd just come back in the room. It was almost like she'd been hypnotised. It was like, and you're back in the room. And I kept taking her to the doctors, and I kept saying, I think there's something wrong. I think, please, can you take me seriously? We were not taken seriously. I spoke to the school, and the school said that we weren't parenting her properly and we weren't putting her to bed on time. She was just tired, and I should pay more attention to daily routine.
How did that make you feel?
I felt, she was my third child. This wasn't my first rodeo. It perhaps is my first rodeo with epilepsy, but I'd seen it professionally. I'd grown up around it. I'd seen it work experience through my jobs, and I kind of thought I knew what I was talking about. But when you have professionals telling you, no, there's nothing wrong, the school's telling you, you're just not doing a good job. Do better. Be a better parent. Then you go away and you think, okay, maybe it is me then. And you just kind of internalise that you're a poor parent.
Which, of course, you are not. So when did someone take you seriously?
I went to the doctors for a final time, and I told the doctor that I would not leave until something was done. I was then turned away again. And in that same week, very, very strangely, I had received a very, very panicked phone call from the school. Mrs. Barnes, Lexi was having speech and language therapy today, and the speech therapist thinks she's seen Lexi having some sort of vacant blank episodes, and she saw several of these in a 20-minute period. We need you to take her to the hospital straight away because we think there's something wrong with her. And just like that, it was, oh, okay then. So, and I did challenge the teacher because at one point they were so concerned with our parenting that they were thinking of reporting us to the local authority. So I did what I was told. I collected her. I took her straight to the doctors again. And I said, I will not move until I've got a referral. And they did take me seriously, but they only took me seriously because a speech and language therapist was prepared to back me up on the observations that I'd seen. Wow.
So then you got this referral, and who did you get a referral to see?
We got a referral to see a paediatrician at East Surrey Hospital, and we waited a long time for that appointment.
How long?
5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. May not be a long time now, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah. 5 months. Okay. So then what? So then what happened?
He listened to us. He accepted what we said. I did feel like a crazy mum, and I was fully expected to be turned away again and told, no, you're imagining it. I felt we were given an EEG appointment to put my mind at rest and to shut me up. So we were put on a non-urgent list, and we did have our EEG, and we waited quite a long time for the results.
How long did you have to wait for the results?
I think the EEG was in July, and we got the results in October. And that was after me chasing.
Yeah. And then what happened?
So I chased the appointment. I rang the neurologist secretary and I said, what's going on? And she looked at the paperwork, and I'll never forget it. She said to me, she said, have you not been seen? And I said, no. And she said, can you come next week? And I said, no, we're going on holiday. It's October half term. I said, we're going away. And she said, when do you come back? And I gave her the date of the Monday, which would be the next working day. We're back, and she went, you'll be seen then. So we were seen, and you were there. We met you.
Yay.
And the shining star. It was a very matter-of-fact diagnosis. It was, yes, this is what she's got. And here's a piece of paper, here's a prescription, this is what she will be taking. And it was really like, sorry, the rug had been pulled. Our world, at the bottom of our world was falling away from us. And in a way, I felt awful to feel this, but I actually felt vindicated, and I wanted to march around to the school and I wanted to say, see, I told you, and I wanted to go and tell that GP. And I was really, really angry, first of all, about it. And there was millions of thoughts running through my head. But I think just that first, yes, she does have that diagnosis. It was so matter of fact. And I think if you weren't there, you kind of just scooped all of the things that had just shattered. You just scooped them all back together again and just told, made us feel it's going to be all right.
I know it's hard. to relive it. And I was there with you and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I know it was a really difficult diagnosis. I could see you and I could see how that affected you and Lee and your whole family. So
yeah,
talk to me.
I wasn't going to cry today.
No, don't be daft. Don't be daft. It's, this is an emotional roller coaster that doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. No. You have good days and you have bad days, and you have those days where you need additional help and you need additional support, and that's the role of us as epilepsy nurses to do for you. And I think the diagnostic journey, the journey that you started is the same for probably mostly every family. They don't know because they have never been there before. They don't know what to expect. You are given a very matter-of-fact diagnosis because I think the consultants, they do this day in, day out, time and time again, and they almost lose a little bit of empathy, whereas that's the massive part of an epilepsy nurse's job. We are there to fill in the blanks. We are there to have that little bit more human side. Not that the consultants aren't, because, the majority are fabulous, but, at the end of the day, it is that time constraints again that we have in these appointments. It'd be great if we could sit there for hours, go through everything, but we don't have that ability to do so. So it sounds like Lexi didn't really have the simplest of diagnosis and the diagnostic journey. So when she was originally diagnosed, Sarah, do you remember what the consultant said to you, what this type of epilepsy was going to be?
So he diagnosed her with benign Rolandic epilepsy, which seemed at the time to best fit the profile of what we were seeing. They were never sort of, he wasn't 100% sure she fitted the profile, but that was the best fit at the time, because also just to mention, her seizures were not, when you say to someone epilepsy, people often jump to the big tonic-clonic seizures where people are sort of really sort of incapacitated, and there's limb jerking, there's tongue biting, and there's all of those things, and she didn't have that type. And the consultant did diagnose benign Rolandic epilepsy, and then obviously after further talking to you with the nighttime episodes where she would be running around screaming in almost like a trance that you couldn't get through to her at all. You couldn't calm her down. She was hysterical, and we would find her in all different places. So when we had the EEG, it was then discovered that she had ESES.
ESES, yeah. So she had ESES. So she had continuous activity happening in her brain at nighttime. So it was almost like a continual seizure, which if we talk about continual seizures, we talk about status, don't we? Status epilepticus. So she was having that constantly at nighttime. And she's drug resistant, isn't she, Sarah? So she's been on a multiple drug regime for many, many years and never found a drug or a combination of drugs that actually worked for her.
No, that's right. We literally tried everything. And I think the biggest scare for me was when we got the midazolam.
The emergency rescue medicines.
Yeah. That was really worrying. We had to have training. You trained us on it.
Yep.
And you also really, really brilliantly came and trained everybody at the school. And it was scary because I thought, oh my goodness, this is what they use to anaesthetize people. What's going to happen to her? And it really scared me. And the first few times of her having it, we had to call an ambulance. That was the protocol, because you also visited the school and you put in a care plan for us at school.
Yeah.
And it was reviewed regularly until it wasn't. And when we had the midazolam, although it broke the seizure, she had the after effects of it were really, really quite frightening. Her breathing was impacted. And, it was a hospital trip. And sometimes you'd find that that an ambulance would come and they'd be a bit, why are we here? What are we doing here then? And it was well, we'll take her. But, it was just really sort of, they didn't really seem that bothered, and it was a big deal to have this medication administered, and it was a big deal to do it.
Yeah.
The things that you'd have to observe for a certain time, have her having this horrible seizure, and they were horrible, before you could administer the medication.
Of course. And when we say to families, we give this drug, this emergency rescue drug at 5 minutes of a seizure or whatever your care plan says for you, it's the longest 5 minutes of your life that you're waiting to give this drug. And then, of course, you're right, the side effect of these emergency drugs, they're doing the job what they're doing. They're going in hard and fast to stop that overexcitability of your brain, which has caused the seizure in the first place. So they are super powerful drugs. And I don't think I ever give them out readily to people, and people go, oh my God, yeah, that's perfect, I want that. It's so frightening because then when you're carrying it everywhere you go with you, and then if you forget it, you worry that there's something's going to happen and you haven't got this emergency drug that you can give. So you were given this diagnosis. You were given these are now the medications that Lexi's now got to take. And then I think the journey then begins to get a bit worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking about this, and it's almost like when you receive that diagnosis, you're dropped off at an island. You're dropped off on this little island by the diagnosis boat, and that's where you stay. And then a boat will come every 6 months to take you to an appointment, and it will take you back again. And I think it's really easy to feel isolated when you do get that diagnosis. And you're on your own. You're standing here with your family on this small island, and you've got life going on around you. Life moves on for everybody else, but for a parent, life stands still. I honestly thought when we got that diagnosis, my first thought was, she's going to die. She's going to die. That's what's going to happen to her. And I thought it was going to kill her.
I remember you telling me. I think you've asked me several times, was she going to die? And it's a very valid question, Sarah. It's a very valid question that as a mum, as a dad, you would be thinking, I don't know anything about this. That there's things people know about epilepsy and they think, oh my goodness, someone is going to die. That the time isn't taken to explain hugely at that point what that diagnosis looks like and what the prognosis is going to be.
Yeah.
So Lexi had a bit of a rocky road, didn't she? Medications didn't work, and her seizures presented in different ways. She ended up with ESS at night when she was having continuous seizure activity during her sleep, and then we wondered why she found it hard to function in the day. She had a lot of trouble on her journey.
Yeah, night times were absolutely horrendous for us. We were saying for a while as well that she'd run around screaming at night, and we couldn't get her. She'd just be screaming and screaming and screaming, and I'd find her under the bed. I'd find her downstairs trying to get out the door, and it was these really strange behaviours. And it was, they're night terrors, that's fine. But when I kept explaining these behaviours to you, and you said no, that let's do a 24-hour EEG just to kind of, just to see what's going on, to see if it is night terrors, because she was still of that age. She was only 5. So, they do still have night terrors. And that was when we discovered what was happening at night for her.
And did you get a bit of relief at that point, knowing that there actually was activity? Because I remember you saying to me, most days actually, there's something going on, there's something not right, I've got to lock windows, I've got to lock doors, we've put stair gates up so to keep her safe. This can't be night terrors, this can't be. And I remember having conversations with you about, okay, let's not jump the gun, let's just wait and see, which is what we as clinicians are really good at saying. Let's just see if the meds work, let's change them a little bit, let's tweak that a bit more. and then let's see what happens. But you kept saying to me, no, it's not right. This is not right. This is not right. And then we found out it's really not right. And so from that point, she hadn't slept for ages.
No, she hadn't. And it was really, really difficult. And, you know, and I get the wait and see approach, but, and as parents, you want the answers, you want them yesterday, you want the cure, you want it, or you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait for the results. You don't, you know, you don't want to wait for the test. You want it all now. And yeah, it was a really, really difficult time. I was new into my career as well. I was trying to navigate that. We, you know, had other children to deal with. Yeah, it was tough.
And talk to me about medicines.
We started on Epilim, and her hair fell out. The front,
I remember.
Front band, yeah. And I kept saying her hair's falling out, and the consultant said, no, that's not one of the side effects. And I said, it's falling out, and it was. Yeah. Then we tried. We were trying a lot of combination of things. At one point, we were titrating another medication as well as taking steroids, and she had to take steroids, and she had to take and I think it was an omeprazole, and she had to have her blood pressure taken twice a week. And
what did the steroids do to her, Sarah?
Oh, her face was, I never thought it would go back. I mean, it absolutely ballooned. I look back now. There's a picture of you and her at the Christmas party. I remember that, and her face. You wouldn't know it was her.
No.
It was.
No.
Yeah.
But the steroids were used as an anti-inflammatory to try and calm down the overexcitability of her brain that was causing the seizures. So it's, you know, one of those ones that we think actually this could be really useful for her. So we moved through her diagnosis and her journey, and it carried on being quite turbulent, I think, for you guys for a long time, with school as well, difficulties with finding the right place for her to be. Talk to me about that.
We battled school. They ended, she just wasn't learning. She couldn't learn. She just could not absorb anything, and we were refused an EHCP, and I kept saying I want her to have it's an education healthcare plan. I wanted her to have it, and I was refused, and I pushed and pushed and pushed. The same teacher that told me that there was nothing wrong with her, and you know, and in the end I feel like I got my way. They did do an EHCP, and she got extra support at school, and it was actually just at lockdown where they finally decided that they could not meet her needs at a mainstream school. And then they said to me, what do you want to do? And selfishly, I thought, you know, I don't want to go into a specialist school. I don't want that for her. But I knew that that was the choice I had to make, and I knew that it was the right choice to make. And she began her journey in a specialist provision. And it's okay, you know, it's really interesting actually, because when her first school finally got that there was something quite seriously wrong with her, they really did pull out all the stops. They really did help, and they did try. And when you kind of move over to a specialist provision, because this is everyday life for them, your child isn't that top priority.
Not special.
And you just feel like, oh, so yeah, not special. That's exactly it. And it just felt like, you know, this isn't every day. You know, this is every day for me, but you need to know that she needs to be treated this way and that way. And she did get special treatment at the end of her mainstream journey. She did, but it was a long journey. But she's in a specialist provision now. It's more towards her learning needs, because she has got a learning disability. We don't know why. Was that due to some sort of damage? You know, had she been having seizures for so long that it did something to her? We don't know. We don't know.
So what help and support did you have while
you
apart from me, what help and support did you have along the way? What was helpful to you, or what wasn't helpful? What did you need and you didn't get?
Google was not helpful to me.
Dr. Google. Dr. Google.
No. Yeah, that wasn't helpful. I honestly, it was just you. And then we were very, very lucky to get a network around us.
So talk to me now about where we are with Lexi now. What is she like now from her epilepsy point of view?
So she's past puberty. Now, puberty for me was a massive fright. I was really, really scared because I kind of thought, I'm not a medical professional, so please don't take my words for this, but I kind of thought we're going to go one way or the other at puberty. She's either going to get really, really bad or things may ease off a little. During the daytime, she still does have absences. She manages them, she can recognise them, and she just kind of brushes them off now. She'll think, oh yeah, I've had a seizure. The night times are still as they were, really. She's still running around screaming. She actually fell over the cat last night, which wasn't great, but here we are. And she's actually she's a little bit under the weather at the moment, and we notice things a bit more when she's under the weather.
Yeah.
So in terms of healthcare, in terms of professionals checking up on us, there is nothing.
That's disappointing.
It is extremely disappointing. There seemed to be there was a change in staff at the hospital, and there seemed to be a real drive to remove groups of parents and patients from the books.
So you feel like you've kind of fallen through like a gap. And
yeah, and it was very much, call us if you see anything and we'll get you an EEG. And we can manage, we're okay, we know what we're dealing with. I almost don't want to know. I don't want to get involved with them anymore, because towards the end of the journey with the hospital, it was very much, oh, do we have to see you?
So where are we now? How is she today? How is she with life today? Just getting on with everything?
She's just a sassy madam. She does have a learning disability. She still has interrupted sleep. And it's really bizarre. It's like she wears the epilepsy diagnosis as a badge. It's like, yeah, I've got this. I've got seizures. Look at me, And it's quite an interesting take on it, really, because she doesn't have the typical seizures that everybody thinks it is associated with epilepsy. She was questioned quite. Her friends would be like, "You've not got seizures. You're just like looking into the atmosphere, or you're just looking at the wall or anything." She'd be like, "No, but this is it. This is my seizures." So she does kind of just own it, really, which is really, really good. But night times are still not great for us. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. So you have other children?
Yes.
That just get on with life as well?
Yes.
Which is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Is there anything that you want to ask me that you've got me here? Is there anything you want to know that I've not ever answered for you in the past, or is there anything you want to ask me while we've got this time?
I think for me, I just I don't know really. One of the biggest worries for me was I wanted you there the whole time. I wanted you living in my house. I wanted you, particularly those first few months, I just wanted you there all of the time. And, how do you manage such anxious? I know I was a horrendously anxious parent, and it's about, you did such an excellent job of managing me and managing all of the problems and all of the questions that I had and all of the anxieties that I had. And it's, how were you? Was I a normal parent?
You were. Do you know, I know you like to think that you weren't, but you were a normal parent. I think everybody, as parents who get this diagnosis, you almost go through like a grief cycle. You go through these periods of stress and denial and, and anger. And it is like a grief cycle because you feel you've lost something, and it is grief. And I think it takes a long time to get to the point where you accept a diagnosis or understand how you can move forward from that. And that is a huge part of an epilepsy nurse's role, is we are there for that crucial first few months, 6 months, a year, to answer all of these questions. Because you used to say to me, oh my God, these questions I'm asking you, they're ridiculous. You think I'm crazy. I hear them from every parent. Every parent thinks they're crazy. Every parent thinks they're not doing the right thing. And my job and epilepsy nurse's job is to look after you and your family. We work holistically. It's not just about the young person. They are at the centre of everything that we do, but there is a family that are so important as well. So that is our job. And people ask me the same question all the time. How do you do it? How do you balance? I don't know. You just do. You just do, because you give, you have empathy, you have sympathy, you have, you're there for the good times and the bad times, and for me, the most rewarding part of my job is seeing you come through the other side of it, where you are more relaxed, you've relaxed into it, you've understood where you are with medicines. And yes, sometimes there's peaks and troughs, but you get to the point where you relax about it. And that's my job. That's what makes an epilepsy nurse specialist special, because that's their job to do that for you.
Absolutely. And you are special. You're one in a million. And
I paid you to say that. Isn't it? So I think I'm going to draw it to a close here, and I'm going to thank you massively, Sarah, for sharing your story on Lexi with us. I think this will be an invaluable podcast for families who are just embarking on their epilepsy journey, or a point through their epilepsy journey, to hear a parent.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely our pleasure. We were really pleased that you could join us, and I'm very grateful for your time. I know you're a very busy, full-time working mummy. So thank you very much. We appreciate you.
No, that's okay. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully see you soon.
See you soon. Take care. Thank you, Sarah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'd really like to thank Sarah for joining us today on this podcast. I think the story that she shared about Lexi is invaluable and be so useful to other parents to know they're not alone, that this journey is a journey, that this journey will have a start, a beginning, and sometimes not a fully conclusive end. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast today. If you did, please like, subscribe, and follow us on socials.
Together we create possible.